What would happen if I told you that Mary Magdalene wasn't simply a follower of Jesus? What would happen inside you if you discovered that this figure so often silenced was actually a priestess initiated into the most sacred mysteries of antiquity? What if Mary Magdalene weren't just a historical woman, but a dormant archetype dwelling within you, waiting to awaken? In the shadows of the official narrative lies another story, a story not written in ink, but encoded in symbols, resonances, and whispers of the soul. Mary Magdalene, the woman who accompanied Christ, was not a mere witness. She was his spiritual equal, his mirror, his alchemical counterpart. Not a redeemed sinner, but a guardian of sacred knowledge. She didn't just listen to the teachings, she embodied them. Mary, whose name means the beloved, Magdalene, the tower, or the high one, represents something much deeper than what we've been told. According to esoteric traditions, she was an initiate of the Egyptian mysteries, a bearer of the lineage of Isis, trained in the rites of healing, transmutation, and rebirth. In her story, veiled by centuries of patriarchal distortion, lives a wisdom that today begins to re-emerge like a lotus sprouting from the mud. This video is a key, not only to decipher a biography, but to activate an ancestral memory within you. Because Mary Magdalene is not just a figure from the past. She is a living symbol of transformation, of the integration of the feminine shadow, and of the union between the masculine and feminine principles within the being. Throughout this journey, we will explore her connection to the ancient temples of Egypt, her hidden role alongside the inner Christ, and how her figure is actually a map for those seeking to heal, balance their energy, and awaken their spiritual potential. I will show you how Magdalena's path is intimately linked to the awakening of the sacred feminine that dwells within all of us, regardless of our gender. Prepare for a journey that challenges official narratives, for a reunion with the initiate you once were, with the wisdom you forgot, and with the feminine strength that burns deep within your soul. Because if you learn to look with the eyes of your heart, you will discover that Mary Magdalene is not dead. She lives in every conscious act of love, in every redeemed shadow, in every soul that chooses to remember. To understand who Mary Magdalene really was, beyond the dogmas, distortions, and imposed silences, we must go back to a time when spiritual knowledge was not divided between masculine and feminine, but integrated into a sacred and unifying vision. A time when women were not simply spiritual companions, but repositories of profound wisdom, guardians of mystery, initiated into the art of inner alchemy. Ancient Egypt was one of the epicenters of this knowledge. There, in the temples consecrated to Isis, the Great Mother, symbol of healing, fertility, and magic, women were trained in the mysteries of the body, energy, and soul. These priestesses were trained to awaken their energy centers, to activate their gifts of inner vision, and to serve as intermediaries between the human and the divine. They were healers of the soul, masters of breath, of sacred sound, and of the power of intention. The figure of Isis was not only worshipped as a goddess, but also lived as an archetype. In Isiac rituals, the initiate symbolically died to be reborn, cleansing his ego and awakening to a higher consciousness. In that context, Mary Magdalene would have been much more than a pious woman. She would have been a priestess trained in the secrets that unify body, spirit, and cosmos. Some Gothic and esoteric currents suggest that she carried this initiatory line and that her union with Jesus was neither casual nor merely romantic, but an alchemical fusion of two complementary principles, the solar and the lunar. Active and receptive, Christ and Mary Magdalene. Let us recall that in the Gnostic Gospels, particularly in the Gospel of Philip and the Gospel of Mary Magdalene found at Nag Hammadi, a very different relationship is suggested between her and Jesus. In these texts, Mary Magdalene is called his companion, the one who always walked by his side, and even the most beloved of all. It is no coincidence that Jesus revealed her as the first witness of his resurrection. She was not only the bearer of the perfume that anointed his body, but also of the sacred memory that accompanied his message. And why was this figure later silenced, degraded, reinterpreted as a repentant prostitute? Because she represented feminine spiritual power at its highest expression. And when feminine power unites with masculine power in consciousness, it cannot be controlled. The message they both carried was incredibly transformative. They taught that the kingdom of heaven was not an external place, but an internal fulfillment, that salvation did not come from outside, but from the awakening of the higher self in the heart of every human being. Mary Magdalene embodied this principle, a woman who, having traversed her shadows, had integrated her polarity and could walk alongside Christ, not as a disciple, but as an equal. In spiritual alchemy, this is represented by the figure of the sacred androgyne, the total human being, who has unified within herself yin and yang, sun and moon, fire and water. The esoteric schools of early Christianity, such as the Egyptian theologians, the Essenes, and the Gnostics, saw Mary Magdalene as an initiatory symbol. She was not a redeemed error, but a fractal of Sophia, divine wisdom. Her fall and redemption were a map of the human soul, which, upon descending into matter, forgets its divinity, but upon remembering, returns to its inner throne. Therefore, when we speak of Mary Magdalene, we are not just speaking of a woman. We are speaking of an initiatory path. We are speaking of the awakening of the sacred feminine, which has been buried for millennia and which today cries out to be reborn, not as an opposite, but as a complement to the new human being. One who dares to remember that the temple is within, that sacred union occurs in the soul, and that redemption is not sought, it is activated. Imagine a rose growing in the darkness, with no one able to see its inner light. Its beauty is intact, its fragrance is perfect, but it has been buried beneath centuries of misunderstanding. Thus has the archetype of Mary Magdalene lived in the collective psyche, hidden, marginalized, misunderstood. However, that rose is not dead. It is alive, waiting for the exact moment to bloom again. That moment is now. Mary Magdalene is not just a historical figure. She is a key, a frequency, a living symbol that pulsates in the heart of every person who yearns to integrate their inner polarities. She represents the woman who has been separated from the temple, yet who carries the temple within her. She is the bearer of the hidden lineage, of wisdom that is not taught in words, but is transmitted like fire through sight, touch, and intention. In the esoteric tradition, each biblical character also embodies an internal archetype. Christ represents the divine solar principle, the logos, the guiding light, pure consciousness. Mary Magdalene represents the lunar principle, receptivity, the alchemical matrix where that light is embodied. But there is something deeper. She is not only the moon, she is also a single cult. She is the solar feminine, the wisdom that illuminates from within, the presence that, having known the pain of separation, has learned to transmute it into compassion. When we say that Mary Magdalene is an archetype, we're saying that she's an energy we all carry within. She has the power to heal our sexual, emotional, and spiritual wounds. She's the voice that reminds us that our vulnerability is sacred. She's the gaze that doesn't judge, but sees beyond appearances. She embodies the part of you that has been exiled by adapting to what you are not, by fearing your intuition, by hiding your truth. And yet, in that exile, something sublime has been born, because the Magdalene archetype doesn't bloom in the light. It blooms in the cave. It blooms when you hit rock bottom and from there decide to remember who you are. She is the one who returns from darkness with the wisdom of descent. Like Inanna in Sumerian mythology, like Persephone in Greek, Mary Magdalene embodies the cyclical journey of the soul that descends to the underworld and returns transformed. This return is not an external event. It is an internal process. Every time you choose to listen to yourself instead of indulging, every time you experience your body as a temple and not an object, every time you forgive yourself and embrace your shadows, you are activating the Magdalene within you. She is the priestess who has transcended guilt. She is the lover who reminds us that the body is sacred. She is the healer who turns pain into medicine. Much has been said about her role as a redeemed sinner, but this is just another mask. The ancients knew that great initiates underwent trials by fire. They were defamed, exiled, forgotten because their presence challenged the established order. Mary Magdalene was no exception. Her figure was distorted because she carried the code of integration. In a world divided by gender, dogma, and hierarchies, she was the embodiment of balance. Her teaching is not a doctrine, it is a resonance. It's not about worshiping her, but about activating her. And when you do, you not only awaken a forgotten part of yourself, but you also remember your stellar lineage, your sacred origin, your innate right to be a channel of light and wisdom. Magdalena, then, is not just a woman. She is a mirror. And you, by looking into that mirror, can remember that divinity is not far away, nor hidden, nor reserved for a select few. She is alive in your blood, in your breath, in your silence. You only need to look within with new eyes and see the light you forgot to see. To understand the true face of Mary Magdalene, we must travel beyond recorded history. We must listen with our hearts to the echoes of a spiritual lineage that began not in Galilee, but long before in the temples of Egypt, under the eternal gaze of Isis, the Great Mother. This is the secret link, the underground current that unites the priestess of the Gospels with the mother goddess of the Nile. Magdalene not only walked alongside Jesus, she also walked the initiation halls of a knowledge that had at its core the power of the sacred feminine. In Egyptian tradition, Isis is the mistress of magic, the weaver of life, the one who gathered the fragments of the dismembered god Osiris to restore him to wholeness. Her archetype is that of the healer, the initiator, and the protector of mystery. It is no coincidence that Mary Magdalene has been represented in some Gothic traditions as the one who knew the unknown, the one who understood more than the apostles. This title was not given to her out of vanity, but rather because of her profound spiritual formation. Some ancient texts, such as the Gospel of Mary and the Pistis Sophia, bear witness to a hidden wisdom that was not learned through discourse, but through direct experiences of the soul. Mary Magdalene was thus an heir to the mysteries of Isis, not only as a symbolic figure, but as a true practitioner of an esoteric path that required purification, inner silence, and communion with the subtle energy of the cosmos. In these rites, the body was not the enemy of the spirit. It was its sacred vessel. Ritual unions between the masculine and the feminine were not profane, but rather gateways to a higher consciousness, where ecstasy was prayer and love, revelation. In the temple of Isis, woman was not an appendage of man. She was his equal, his reflection, his initiatory key. This vision is what Magdalena embodied and defended, even though time, dogma, and reinterpretation reduced it to a caricature. She was not simply the redeemed, but the initiate, not the sinner, but the bearer of the Holy Grail, not as a physical cup, but as a symbol of the conscious womb, of the remembering heart and the transforming soul. This is the heart of the mystery. The Grail is not found in a hidden abbey or an ancient scroll. It is found in the alchemical womb of one who has united her polarities, of one who has embraced her shadow, of one who has reconciled her masculine side with her feminine energy. Mary Magdalene, like Isis, represents this sacred synthesis. Both dance in the same mandala of wisdom that has been erased, discredited, and finally rediscovered. In esoteric art, we often see the Black Madonna. This symbol, misinterpreted for centuries, actually represents hidden feminine wisdom, the cosmic matrix, the stellar night that gives birth to all light. Mary Magdalene, as a veiled figure, is also that black virgin, not pure through repression, but whole through integration. Her blackness is the depth of mystery, not the shadow to be feared, but the one to be listened to. Through this archetype, the soul learns that it need not be divided between spirit and flesh, between reason and emotion. Learn that within you there is a priestess who already knows, who already remembers, who is just waiting to be summoned. And when that part of you awakens, everything begins to align. Bonds heal, your voice is empowered, your heart expands. Then you are no longer a follower, you are an initiate. Mary Magdalene is not a static figure from the past. She is a portal, a calling, a living symbol of the inner alchemy that occurs when we stop running away from the wounded feminine and begin to honor it as the power that has always been creative and transformative. Infinite. The alchemy of the spiritual isn't realized only in temples or mystical visions. True transformation happens when we embody wisdom in every daily act. If Mary Magdalene is, as we have seen, more than a historical figure, if she is a living archetype, then she is also an energy that you can invoke, cultivate, and express. How does this translate into daily life? How can you, man or woman, Awaken that inner priestess or priestess that has slumbered for centuries in the forgotten corners of your psyche. Below, I present 5 fundamental practices and principles for integrating the frequency of Mary Magdalene into your daily life. They are simple yet powerful doors to the internalization of sacred wisdom. The first practice is silence as a temple. Mary Magdalene was a woman of contemplation. Before speaking, she listened. Before acting, she felt. Begin your day with a few minutes of absolute silence, not only as a meditative exercise, but as a devotional act. In that apparent emptiness, you will hear the deep waters of your soul. Practicing silence is actually building an invisible temple where your sacred self can manifest without external interference. Second practice, honor your body as a sanctuary. The vision of Mary Magdalene reminds us that the body is not an obstacle to enlightenment, but its ally. Every cell, every heartbeat, every emotion stored in your skin is part of the living grail you carry. Practice loving self-observation, mindful touch, and intuitive eating. Bathe your body as if it were a ritual. Inhabit it as if it were a temple where divinity is revealed. Only then will you be able to reconnect with the forgotten sacredness of your physical existence. Third practice, integrate your shadow with love. The priestess's path is neither linear nor always luminous. It involves facing your repressed emotions, your wounds, your hidden desires. Magdalena, as the archetype of the misunderstood woman, invites us to embrace our own rejected areas. Don't run away from your jealousy, your anger, or your sadness. Observe them, listen to them. What part of you is asking for love through that emotion? The integration of the shadow is the deepest alchemy of the soul. Fourth practice, cultivate the balance of polarities. Within you live 2 complementary energies, the solar and the lunar, the masculine and the feminine. Magdalene's teaching is a call to unite these forces, not separate them. If you are a highly rational person, allow for moments of intuition and receptivity. If you are highly emotional, cultivate action and direction. Meditate by visualizing your energy as a dance of sun and moon in balance, not as conflicting opposites. Fifth practice, walk with sacred purpose. Every day can be an act of devotion. Ask yourself upon awakening, what energy do I want to anchor in the world today? How can I serve from a place of love? Keep a sacred journal where you write down your dreams, your visions, your awakenings. This way, your life will cease to be a sequence of automatic events and will become a personal liturgy, where every daily gesture honors the divinity within you. Integrating Mary Magdalene doesn't mean replicating her story, but rather awakening the archetype she embodies. The union between the human and the divine, the wounded feminine and restored wisdom. You don't need to belong to a specific religious tradition. All you need is a willingness to look within yourself, to honor what has always been sacred, and to allow that part of you, the initiate, to fully express itself. Because when you decide to live as a temple, as a moving altar, the world begins to respond to your highest frequency. And it is then, without the need for external miracles, that the true mystery is revealed. You are the Grail. It is no coincidence that after 2 millennia of silence, the name of Mary Magdalene resonates strongly in the souls of spiritual seekers. Her figure has emerged from the dust of oblivion, not only as a companion of Jesus or a witness to his resurrection, but as a symbol of the rebirth of the sacred feminine. Today we understand that she was not just a historical woman, but a bearer of a living archetype, that of the soul that redeems itself, transforms itself, and ascends to its inner throne. We have explored the spiritual map that reveals its deepest dimension. We saw Mary Magdalene, initiated into the Egyptian mysteries, knowledgeable in the rituals of Isis and inner alchemy. We recognized her as the priestess of conscious love, of the integration of the shadow, and of the union of polarities that allows for the birth of the inner Christ. We discover that her story is not just an ancient tale, but a powerful mirror of our own journey. For you, too, carry within you a forgotten part, a denied wisdom, a creative energy waiting to be unleashed. The Magdalene archetype lives in men and women alike, as a call to reconcile body and soul, the profane and the sacred, wound and revelation. She teaches us that redemption does not occur outside, but within, not in perfection, but in the loving integration of all that we are. True spirituality does not lie in evading the world, but in descending into the heart with the same courage with which Mary Magdalene carried the cross. Her path is one of radical love, embodied compassion, and wisdom ignited by experience. It invites us to stop searching outside for what we never lost, our divine essence, buried under layers of guilt, conditioning, and forgetfulness. What if all you're missing isn't more knowledge, more techniques, or more external validation, but rather remembering who you are and reclaiming your inner sanctuary? This video has been an invitation to that remembrance, a symbolic key to open a door that has always been there, but now it's up to you to cross it. You can continue to see Mary Magdalene as a distant figure, or you can begin to live her, embody her, and feel her as a living force guiding your steps toward a more coherent, fuller, and more sacred life. If these words have resonated with you, if you feel this forgotten wisdom touching a dormant chord in your heart, then you are ready. Ready to remember that you are the temple, you are the altar, you are the grail. Subscribe, like, and share this message so that more souls can remember their forgotten spiritual lineage. This is not a journey taken alone. It is a collective awakening, a rose that blooms in every willing heart. Stay tuned as we continue to explore the mysteries, hidden teachings, and truths that since time immemorial have illuminated the path of those who dare to look beyond the veil. May the rose of Magdalene blossom in your soul.